When my only daughter told me she'd been secretly working with my business rival to take over my company and kick me out of my own house, I collapsed right there in my lawyer's office. 3 days later, I was living in a cheap motel room, watching my face plastered across business news channels labeled as the fallen CEO. That's when I realized motherhood is like building a sandcastle. You spend decades carefully crafting every detail, only for the tide of betrayal to wash it all away in seconds. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a roller coaster built by a drunk engineer. I used to think I had it all figured out. My name is Helena, and at 55, I built a life most women would envy. A thriving business I created from nothing. A beautiful home overlooking the bay. And what I thought was an unbreakable bond with my daughter, Clara. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the warning signs. The hushed phone conversations that stopped when I entered the room. The sudden interest in company financials she'd never cared about before. The lunch meetings with strange men in suits that she'd dismiss as just networking, Mom. But when you've raised a child alone, changed every diaper, soothed every fever, cheered at every graduation, you develop a dangerous kind of blind spot. I couldn't imagine Clara being anything but the sweet girl who once made me Mother's Day cards covered in glitter and promises. Ms. Reynolds, there's something you need to see, my attorney Richard said that fateful Thursday morning. His voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to detonate your life. These documents were filed yesterday with the board. He slid a folder across his polished mahogany desk. Inside was a 30-page legal document with Clara's signature on every page. A hostile takeover plan. My daughter had spent 6 months secretly gathering proxy votes from board members, documenting fabricated leadership failures on my part, and partnering with Maxwell Incorporated, our biggest competitor and my personal nemesis for 2 decades. This can't be real, I whispered, my fingers trembling as I flipped through page after page of betrayal inked in legal language. There's more, Richard said, unable to meet my eyes. She's also filed a petition to void your living trust. The house, the vacation property in Aspen, she's claiming you signed them over to her last year. That's impossible. I never. The signatures look authentic, Helena. Very authentic. Script part separator, I felt my entire body go cold. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped. The room tilted sideways. Are you saying my daughter forged my signature? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair. I'm saying we need to hire a handwriting expert immediately. But Helena, these documents have timestamps, witnesses. There's even video footage of you supposedly signing over power of attorney during your recovery from that minor surgery last year. The surgery. 6 months ago, I had a routine procedure, nothing serious, but Clara had insisted on taking care of everything. The paperwork, the recovery, even handling my correspondence while I was resting. I'd been so touched by her attentiveness. She drugged me, I said flatly as realization dawned. She must have slipped something extra into my pain medication. That's why I don't remember signing anything. Richard's eyes widened. That's a serious accusation. This is a serious betrayal. I slammed my palm on his desk, making his expensive pen holder jump. My own daughter. As I drove home, to what might soon no longer be my home, my phone rang. Clara's name flashed on the screen. I pulled over, my hands shaking too badly to drive. Why? Was all I could say when I answered. Mom. Her voice was cool, businesslike. A stranger's voice. I was hoping Richard would wait until I could talk to you myself. 30 years, I whispered. I gave you 30 years of my life. And 15 of those years, you used me as your prop, she replied. Poor single mom builds empire while raising daughter alone. Great PR story. Meanwhile, I was raised by nannies while you built your precious company. That's not fair. I worked so we could have a good life. No, you worked because you're obsessed with power. Well, guess what? I learned from the best. Script part separator, The line disconnected, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. I'd given Clara everything, every opportunity, every advantage, and this was how she repaid me? By evening, My keycard no longer worked at company headquarters. By morning, my house locks had been changed. The security guard, Tony, who'd watched Clara grow up, couldn't even look me in the eye as he handed me a pre-packed suitcase and informed me that Ms. Reynolds Jr. had instructed him not to allow me back on the property. There must be some mistake, I said, still unable to process what was happening. Tony, you've known me for 15 years. I'm sorry, Ms. Reynolds. I have my orders. His voice cracked slightly. There's a letter for you. The envelope contained a cashier's check for $50,000 and a coldly worded note. This should cover your expenses until the legal proceedings conclude. The rest of your personal items are in storage. My lawyer will contact yours with the unit number. $52,000. After building a $200 million company. After raising her since the day her father walked out when she was just 3 years old. I checked into the Bayview Motel, the kind of place I'd never have considered staying before. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and old cigarettes. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the dusty TV screen. How did I miss this? I whispered to myself. What turned my daughter into this? My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Clara's officially calling for a vote of no confidence. I'm trying to delay, but she's got the votes. We need a counter-strategy now. I closed my eyes, trying to think like the businesswoman I was, not the devastated mother I felt like. This wasn't just about family betrayal anymore. This was war, and I needed to start fighting back. Script part separator, My first step was calling Julia, my executive assistant of 10 years. If anyone knew what had been happening behind my back, it would be her. Helena! Thank God! Julia's voice cracked with emotion. I've been trying to reach you since yesterday, but they've locked me out of the communication systems. What's going on, Julia? How long has Clara been planning this? At least 6 months, she whispered. She's been having private meetings with Edward Maxwell every Tuesday at that little cafe on Pine Street. I only found out because I saw them together when I was picking up my daughter from piano lessons. Edward Maxwell. My blood turned to ice. That snake had been trying to destroy my company for years, and now he was using my own daughter to do it. There's more, Julia continued. I think they have someone else on the inside. Someone high up who's been feeding them confidential information. Who? I'm not sure, but 2 weeks ago I overheard Clara on the phone talking about keeping Richard focused on the wrong documents. Richard. My own attorney. The thought made me physically ill. Helena, I made copies, Julia said quietly, of everything I could access before they locked me out. Financial reports, emails, meeting minutes. I have them at my house. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. Within an hour, I was sitting at Julia's kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of papers. What emerged was far worse than a simple corporate takeover. Clara and Maxwell weren't just after my company. They were planning to strip its assets, fire most of the staff, and absorb the client list and patents into Maxwell's organization. 200 people would lose their jobs. My life's work would disappear. There's something else, Julia said, sliding a final folder toward me. Inside was a medical report, my medical report from 6 months ago. How did you get this? I asked. It was in Clara's desk. She left it unlocked when she went to lunch yesterday. I scanned the document, then froze when I saw the toxicology results. There, in black and white, was evidence of a sedative in my system that hadn't been prescribed by my doctor. She really did drug me. Script part separator, She really did drug me. Julia, I said, my voice shaking, I need to make copies of all this. Then I need a secure place to work. You can use my home office. My husband's away on business all week. By midnight, we'd compiled enough evidence to paint a disturbing picture. Clara hadn't just turned on me overnight. This had been a calculated, long-term strategy. The company record showed subtle changes over months. Key contracts renegotiated with unusual terms. Intellectual property quietly transferred to shell companies. Loyal employees systematically pushed out or reassigned. This isn't just about taking your position, Julia said. They're gutting the company from the inside. But why would Clara destroy what she's inheriting? I wondered aloud. The answer came buried in an email exchange we found between Clara and Edward Maxwell. They weren't planning to maintain the company at all. They were harvesting its value and planning to sell off the pieces. Maxwell would get our technology patents and client list. Clara would walk away with a $15 million consulting fee and a senior position at Maxwell's company. My life's work was being carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey. There's something else, Julia said hesitantly, pulling up an old personnel file. Did you know Clara interviewed for a job at Maxwell 5 years ago? Before you promoted her at your company. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's impossible. She went straight from college to working for me. According to this, Maxwell rejected her application. Said she lacked experience. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Clara's resentment. Her eagerness to prove herself. The timing of when she started becoming distant. This is about revenge, I whispered. Not just against me, but against Maxwell too. She's using him just like she used me. For the first time in days, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I finally understood what we were dealing with, and how to fight back. Script part separator, I called an emergency meeting with 3 people I knew I could trust. Julia, Hank Peterson, my former head of security who'd retired last year, and Diana Chen, a board member who'd been mysteriously absent from recent meetings due to a family emergency that I now suspected was manufactured by Clara. We met at a diner 30 miles outside the city, where no one would recognize us. They've frozen all your accounts, Diana confirmed, sliding her tablet across the table. The board vote is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. It's essentially a formality. Clara already has 12 of the 15 votes lined up. Including Richard's proxy, Hank added grimly. Your lawyer sold you out, Helena. He's been promised general counsel position when the dust settles. I should have felt devastated, but instead, a strange sense of calm had taken over. When you've already lost everything, you have nothing left to fear. So what's our play? Julia asked, nervously stirring her coffee. We need 3 things, I said. First, proof that I was drugged during that surgery recovery. Second, evidence of Maxwell's real intentions for the company. And third, something that proves Clara and Richard conspired to commit fraud. In less than 24 hours? Diana looked skeptical. Actually, Hank said slowly, I might have something. He pulled out his phone. When I retired, I didn't exactly turn in all my access credentials. Old habits die hard. I've been monitoring the security system remotely. Call it professional curiosity. He placed his phone on the table, showing a video of Clara and Richard in my office after hours, practicing my signature. This is from 2 weeks before your surgery, Hank said. I've got dozens more like it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. Now we just need to get into the board meeting. Leave that to me, Diana said, her expression hardening. I've had enough of being sidelined. Script part separator, As we finished our coffee, the waitress refilled our cups with a knowing look. It was nearly 3 a.m., and the 4 of us huddled around that laminate table might have seemed like ordinary insomniacs to anyone else, but we were plotting a corporate counter-coup. There's another problem, Diana said, lowering her voice. Maxwell's people are already in the building. They've been conducting a friendly audit since yesterday. Friendly like a shark, Julia muttered. I leaned forward. How many board members do you think might flip if they knew Clara and Maxwell planned to dismantle the company completely? 3, maybe 4, Diana replied. Most of them just want to protect their investments. If they think the ship is sinking, they'll jump to whoever seems most likely to keep them dry. Then we need to show them who's really sinking the ship, I said. Dawn found me parked outside my former office building. The security guard, not Tony, but someone new I didn't recognize, gave me a suspicious glance but was distracted by a delivery truck that Diana had arranged. Wearing a delivery uniform borrowed from Julia's teenage son, complete with a cap pulled low over my eyes, I slipped through the loading dock entrance. The irony wasn't lost on me, sneaking into my own company like a thief. Julia met me at the service elevator, her eyes wide with nervous energy. 4th floor is clear, she whispered. Clara's in the executive conference room preparing for the board meeting. Richard's with her. And our special delivery? In position. Hank's got the security feeds looped on the relevant floors. My heart pounded as we made our way to the IT department. Stephen Chong, our head of cybersecurity and one of the few people I'd personally hired, was waiting. Mrs. Reynolds, he said formally, though his eyes betrayed his shock at my appearance. Julia said this was urgent. More than you know, Stephen. I need access to the server room. And what I'm about to ask you to do could cost you your job. He didn't hesitate. You gave me a chance when no one else would. What do you need? 20 minutes later, we had what we needed. Complete access to the company's communication system and evidence that Maxwell's audit team had already begun transferring our proprietary data to external servers. They're not even waiting for the vote, Stephen said, disgusted. They're stealing your company's intellectual property right now. Script part separator, I checked my watch. Less than an hour until the board meeting. Can you lock them out? I asked. Stephen's fingers flew across the keyboard. I can slow them down, create some technical difficulties. But they'll figure it out eventually. That's all we need. Time to get to the boardroom, I said. Julia, you know what to do. Diana was waiting for me in a small conference room near the boardroom where my fate, and the company's, would be decided. She handed me a company ID badge and a blazer. Several board members asked about you, she said. They're uncomfortable with how quickly this is moving. Good. Discomfort leads to doubt. Hank appeared in the doorway. They're gathering now. Richard just arrived with the paperwork. Clara's wearing your mother's pearls. That detail hit me like a physical blow. Those pearls were a family heirloom. My mother had given them to me on her deathbed. Let's go, I said, squaring my shoulders. The shocked faces when I walked into the boardroom alongside Diana would have been comical under different circumstances. Clara actually dropped her water glass, sending it shattering across the polished table. Mom, what are you doing here? Richard jumped to his feet. This is a closed meeting. Security. Actually, Diana interjected smoothly. As a major shareholder, Mrs. Reynolds has every right to be present during a vote concerning her position. Robert Fielding, our oldest board member, looked between Clara and me with confusion. I was told Helena had voluntarily stepped aside due to health concerns. Is that what my daughter told you, Robert? I smiled tightly. How interesting, considering my doctor cleared me completely just yesterday. I have the paperwork right here. Clara's face hardened. This is a desperate attempt to disrupt legitimate business proceedings. The board has already script part separator been fully briefed on your leadership failures, Mom. You're operating on outdated information and emotional appeals won't change the facts. I've never been more clear-headed in my life, I replied, then addressed the entire board. Before you vote, there are some critical facts you should know about what this so-called leadership transition really means. I nodded to Diana, who connected her laptop to the boardroom's projection system. On screen appear the email exchanges between Clara, Maxwell, and Richard detailing their plan to liquidate the company. These documents show that this isn't a leadership transition, it's a corporate assassination. They plan to fire 80% of our staff, sell off our patents, and dismantle everything we've built. That's taken out of context. Clara sputtered, her face draining of color. Richard leapt in. These are clearly fabricated documents, and accessing them constitutes corporate espionage. Just then, Edward Maxwell himself burst into the room, his normally composed demeanor shattered. What the hell is going on? Our server access just got revoked. He stopped short when he saw me. Helena, this is unexpected. Is it, Edward? I countered. Because according to your own team's communications, you expected to have my entire R&D database downloaded by now. The boardroom erupted into confused chatter. Robert Fielding slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Is someone going to explain what's really happening here? I'll tell you exactly what's happening, I said, my voice steady. My daughter drugged me after my surgery 6 months ago to obtain fraudulent signatures. She and Richard then used those documents to attempt a hostile takeover, with the express purpose of selling our company's assets to Maxwell Incorporated. Ridiculous! Clara stood up, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Where's your proof? The door opened again, and Julia entered with a USB drive. Wordlessly, she handed it to Diana, who plugged it into her laptop. On screen appeared the security footage of Clara and Richard practicing my signature, followed by footage from my home during my recovery, showing Clara clearly adding something to my medication. Script part separator, The room went deathly silent. That's not what it looks like, Clara stammered. One of the board members, Janet Willis, removed her glasses slowly. It looks exactly like what your mother described, forgery and drugging her. I turned to Edward Maxwell, who was edging toward the door. Going somewhere, Edward? Before you leave, perhaps you'd like to explain to the board why your team is currently attempting to download our proprietary software? Several board members turned to him with shocked expressions. This is absurd. I was invited here by Clara as a potential strategic partner, nothing more, Maxwell insisted, his practiced corporate smile faltering. Diana tapped a few keys on her laptop, bringing up another document. This contract, drafted 3 weeks ago, transfers ownership of our core patents to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, a shell company owned by you, Mr. Maxwell. The board members were now openly glaring at Clara, Maxwell, and Richard. Clara made one last, desperate attempt. Mom has always been jealous of my success. She's never wanted me to have any real power in this company. She sees me as competition, not as her successor. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and felt an overwhelming sadness. Those pearls around her neck, my mother's pearls, seemed to glow accusingly under the boardroom lights. Clara, I said softly, I built this company for you. Everything I've ever done was to create something meaningful to pass on to you someday. Her eyes filled with tears, but whether from guilt or frustration, I couldn't tell. Robert Fielding stood up. I've heard enough. I move that we immediately rescind any changes to leadership based on potentially fraudulent documents, and that we contact the authorities regarding these serious allegations. Script part separator, Janet Willis seconded the motion immediately. I also move that we terminate any discussions with Maxwell Incorporated and conduct a full audit of all communications and contracts from the past 6 months. Clara's face contorted with rage. You can't do this. I have the votes. Not anymore, said Thomas Chin, another board member. This isn't just about leadership style, Clara. This is fraud and corporate espionage. Edward Maxwell straightened his tie. This meeting is clearly compromised. My legal team will be in touch. He headed for the door. Actually, Hank's voice boomed as he blocked the doorway. The police would like a word with you first, Mr. Maxwell. Behind him stood 2 serious-looking detectives. One of them stepped forward. Edward Maxwell. We have some questions about corporate espionage and conspiracy to commit fraud. Richard turned pale. This is all a misunderstanding. I was simply representing my client's interests. Which client would that be, Richard? I asked coldly. Because it certainly wasn't me. The detective gestured to Clara. Ms. Reynolds, we'll need to speak with you as well. As they were escorted out, Clara looked back at me, her expression a mixture of fury and fear. You've ruined everything, she hissed. No, Clara, I rappli e souffli. You did that yourself. The boardroom emptied quickly after that, leaving just me, Diana, Julia, and a few shell-shocked board members. Robert Fielding approached me, shaking his head. Helena, I can't begin to express how sorry I am. We were led to believe. I understand, Robert. She fooled me too, and I'm her mother. Outside the boardroom, reporters had already gathered, tipped off about the dramatic showdown. As I stepped out, camera flashes blinded me. Mrs. Reynolds, is it true your daughter tried to steal your company? Did Maxwell Incorporated attempt corporate espionage? Will you press charges against your own daughter? Script part separator, I held up my hand for silence. The truth is more complicated than any headline could capture. Yes, there was an attempt to take control of my company through fraudulent means. Yes, there will be legal consequences. But today, the most important thing is that Reynolds Innovations remains intact, our employees' jobs are secure, and our clients' trust has been preserved. I turned away from the microphones, unable to say more without breaking down. Julia guided me to the elevator, shielding me from the reporter's continued questions. Back in my office, my real office, I sat at my desk and ran my fingers over the familiar wood grain. The company was safe, but at what cost? My daughter was likely facing criminal charges. The daughter I had raised, loved, sacrificed everything for. The next week passed in a blur of legal meetings, employee reassurances, and damage control. Clara was released on bail pending trial, with orders not to leave the state or contact anyone at the company. Maxwell was fighting the charges with an army of attorneys, while Richard had already offered to cooperate in exchange for leniency. I threw myself into work, staying late every night, as if the familiar rhythms of business could somehow fill the gaping hole in my heart. One evening, as I was reviewing contracts, Julia knocked softly on my door. "There's someone here to see you," she said hesitantly. I looked up, exhausted. "I don't have any more appointments today." "It's not an appointment. It's—" She stepped aside, revealing Tony, my former security guard, looking uncomfortable in a suit instead of his uniform. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, twisting his hat in his hands. "I need to tell you something about Clara. Script part separator, equals. Tony stepped into my office, his weathered face lined with guilt. "Mrs. Reynolds, I should have come forward sooner. Clara wasn't acting alone." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "What do you mean?" "Your ex-husband was involved." Tony's words hit me like a physical blow. "I saw the meeting several times at your house when you were traveling. David. He hasn't been in Clara's life for 20 years. My voice shook with disbelief. "He reached out to her about a year ago. I overheard them talking about how he'd been watching your success from afar. How he deserved a piece of what you built." The betrayal suddenly deepened to a new level. David had abandoned us when Clara was just a toddler, disappearing completely after the divorce. And now he'd poisoned our daughter against me? "There's more," Tony said, sliding an envelope across my desk. "Security cameras at your house captured this conversation 3 months ago." I inserted the flash drive into my computer with trembling hands. The video showed Clara and David sitting in my kitchen. "Once we take control," David was saying, "Maxwell pays us, and I disappear again. Your mother never needs to know I was involved." Clara nodded. "She'll think it was all me. The perfect revenge for both of us." "What did I ever do to deserve revenge from either of you?" I whispered at the screen. Tony looked down. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm so sorry. I should have told you immediately, but Clara threatened my son's job at the city. I was afraid." I raised my hand to stop him. "I understand, Tony. Thank you for coming forward now." After he left, I sat alone in the darkening office, watching the video again. My ex-husband and my daughter, plotting against me like characters in some twisted Greek tragedy. The next morning, I called my new attorney. "I want a meeting with Clara before the trial." No lawyers present. 2 days later, we sat across from each other in a neutral conference room. Clara still wore my mother's pearls, a final act of defiance. "Why?" I asked simply. Her eyes, my eyes, really, met mine. "Dad convinced me you stole his ideas when you started the company. That everything you built should have been half his. And you believed him. Without ever asking me. You never talked about him." She exploded. 20 years of silence. Then he shows up with documents, proof that you pushed him out after stealing his business plan. I opened my briefcase and placed a yellowed folder between us. "You mean this business plan? The one with only his name on it?" She stared at it, confused. "I kept it all these years as a reminder," I said quietly. "Your father didn't write a single word of this." "I did. He put only his name on it when we tried to get our first loan. No bank would take a woman entrepreneur seriously in those days." Her face crumpled as decades of manipulation unraveled. The trial made headlines nationwide. Father-daughter conspiracy fails. Family betrayal in corporate America. David fled the country before arrests could be made. Clara accepted a plea deal, 5 years probation and community service. Maxwell's company didn't survive the scandal. Richard was disbarred. 6 months later, Clara came to my office, pearls in hand. "I found these in my things," she said, placing them on my desk. "They belong to you." I closed her fingers back around them. Keep them. Let them remind you that legacy isn't just what we inherit, but what we choose to do with it. We're not healed, that will take years. But as she left, she asked if we could have coffee sometime. It's a small beginning. The company is stronger than ever. And me. I've learned that building an empire means nothing if you lose sight of why you're building it in the first place. Some things break beyond repair. But sometimes, when you pick up the pieces, you build something different. Not perfect, but real. And real is enough.